morning. How's everyone doing today? Good. Can we give a big welcome to everyone joining us online this morning? We hope to see you here at our campus in person sometime soon. If we haven't met yet, my name is Shannon. I'm one of the pastors here at the Well. If you've been here the last couple of weeks, you've seen a lot of me. I'm sorry for that. No one's sick today. I am supposed to be here. This was planned ahead of time. But I'm very excited this morning because for the first time ever that I've been preaching, my mom is here in person to join us today. Her name's Janice, and she's the best woman I know. And she might tell you this morning that we butt heads a lot, which, while true, isn't the most important thing about our relationship. But feel free to come up and say hi to her after service. Let her know how much you love me, what a great job she did raising me. But I'm just so glad she's here. So love you, Mom. You're beautiful. We are in our At the Feet of Jesus series where we are unpacking some of the most important lessons and messages that Jesus gave to the crowds that came to see him and his disciples and what they mean for our lives and our faith journeys. And a lot of the things that he says throughout the Gospels we are familiar with or we've heard before, but we don't know how to apply them, or maybe we haven't spent a lot of time kind of really deciding what it means for us. Last Sunday, Pastor Jerry preached a message about the freedom that we can find in obedience to Jesus. When a lot of times the world will say, you have to sacrifice so much to follow Jesus. Is it worth it? And you feel you have to give things up or change your life or all these different things that may be true about stepping into faith life with Jesus, but the freedom that we find in Christ by obedience to him really is just better than all of the things we might be leaving behind. If you didn't get a chance to hear that message last week, I highly recommend you go online to our YouTube page and watch it, because it is just a great reminder of the beauty and love and things you can find in obedience that really do magnify the best parts of life. Today we are continuing on in Luke, kind of in that same vein of what it looks like to have faith in Jesus, to live a life of faith in Jesus. And as we go through the Gospels, we're going to be in Luke 11 today. If you have a Bible, you want to flip to that page, or if you want to join get our app and find our sermon notes that are there every Sunday, or you can follow me along on the screen. In these chapters, the crowds have been demanding that Jesus do signs and wonders and miracles. They want to see a sign from him that he is who he says he is. Now, last week, he does a sign. He has cast out a demon from a person. And immediately they were like, you must be the devil, which is I just did what you asked me to do. And now you're saying that's not enough evidence, or it's evidence of something completely different that's not true. And so Jesus is wonderful. So he's not frustrated the way that I would be frustrated probably, but he is oh my gosh, you guys keep asking for more things. And it's just interesting how quickly we are to just deny evidence when we see it, because it doesn't sit well with what we want to believe or want to think is true. And so in last week's message, they are well, you did it, we asked you to do it, but we don't like that it actually is true. So we're going to still push against it. So we're starting in verse 29 in chapter 11. And it says, as the crowd pressed in on Jesus, they're still going for it, he said, this evil generation keeps asking me to show them a miraculous sign. But the only sign I will give them is the sign of Jonah. What happened to him was a sign to the people of Nineveh that God had sent him. What happens to the Son of Man will be a sign to these people that he was sent by God. I love that he's talking to people in third person while he calls them the evil generation. Look at this crowd. Look what they're doing to me. And I just think it's interesting that when Jesus says this evil generation, he doesn't mean you specific ones. He means all the generations that are going to press against or question or decide that I'm not who I am. And so he's I'm actually not going to give you the sign that you think you want, because you already have one that's more than enough. And that is true for us a lot, where we're well, if God just did this, I think I would have more faith, or I think I would believe it. And God's I have done literally everything I could possibly do. And what's important to know is that we have more signs and wonders today than they had when this was written and when this happened. And so we know that if Jesus is going to say this to these people, how much more is it true for us? So he says, you're going to get the sign of Jonah. You have had the sign of Jonah, and that is enough. And he's drawing a parallel between the story of Jonah and his own ministry story that helps us kind of understand where he's coming from when it comes to hearing from God and believing that God sent people. So Jonah, if you're familiar with the Bible at all, is an Old Testament prophet. It's a very short book, 4 chapters, and he was kind of commissioned by God to go to the city of Nineveh. And Nineveh was like evil. It was just like not a great place. It's quoted by Nahum in another Old Testament book as the city of bloodshed, which is like not a great moniker. Like I would not want to go to that city at all. The culture there was violent and ran rampant with sin. They had prostitution and child sacrifice and all these like horrible, horrible things. And it's easy to look at Nineveh and be like, what a terrible place. But if we really look at our society and the world that we live in, there are not places that are much better than Nineveh out there sometimes. Like there's plenty of places that definitely could be described that same way. And so God says, Jonah, I want you to go tell Nineveh that they need to repent, that they need to come back to me, or I'm going to destroy them. And Jonah's like, no, not doing that. And so he decides, instead of just staying where he is, which I would probably do, just not go, he's like, I'm actually going to go the opposite direction, get further away from Nineveh. This is no longer far enough. And so he gets on a boat headed for a place called Tarshish. And on the boat with the crew and the captain, a storm starts happening. And the crew is like, okay, there wasn't a storm before this guy showed up, and now it feels not great. And so Jonah goes to take a nap because he's unbothered, and they're all freaking out, trying to keep the boat right. And finally, the captain goes down to Jonah and is like, hey, listen, do you know why there's a storm? Because I don't think it's our fault. And Jonah was like, yeah, it's me. I am the problem on this boat, and I'm so sorry. And he's like, just throw me overboard. You guys don't have to deal with this. It's like not your problem. Just throw me overboard. And they're like good guys. If you read it, they're like, we know that's not great to throw people overboard. Like we don't want to do that. So they pray for the Lord's forgiveness. They're like, hey, Lord, forgive us for throwing your servant overboard, but we really don't want to be in this storm anymore. And we think it's his fault. So he gets chucked overboard and swallowed by a fish. He's in the fish for 3 days. The fish throws him up on dry land. And then he's like, I guess I should go to Nineveh now. So he just made his whole life so much harder. Like if he'd just gone, he wouldn't have had to do all that. But we find out when he goes to Nineveh and recounts the story of how he got there and what God had done, that actually adds credibility and testimony to his message, to his story. That he gets there and he's like, hey, listen, God sent me here and I went through a whole lot of stuff trying not to, but now I'm here to tell you that you're messing everything up and you have to do better. And basically immediately, the king, everyone in Nineveh is like, you're so right. Let's get our act together and we'll fix all this and we're going to turn back to God. And they do. And this whole city is reformed and redeemed and renewed, and it's beautiful, wonderful celebration, except the only person upset is Jonah. He's like, well, this isn't what I saw coming, because he didn't like Nineveh, and he didn't like that they were going to get to be full of grace and be with God because they'd been so terrible. And I think that that is something that we need to be careful of when we see people out there who are living lives that we either don't approve of or we know aren't good for them, or we're judging, honestly, because our hearts are hard sometimes. And when people start to make changes or to go after something that's new or more noble, more towards Jesus, it's sometimes easy for us to be like, well, wait a second, what about all the terrible things you did? Forgetting that Jesus took care of all the terrible things that we do. And so Jonah in this moment has completely forgotten that he was sent for this exact purpose, that they would be redeemed and restored to God. And so the city believed that Jonah was sent from God to do what he was supposed to do so that they could be right with God again. And that's what Jesus is saying, that he's been sent from God for us so that we could be right with God again. And what will happen to him, the things that he's going to go through, the things that he'll experience, is a confirmation to us that he is exactly who he says he is. So when he's telling this crowd, hey, you're ignoring all of the signs that you already have. You're asking for more, but you've ignored all the ones that have come before. But I am here to give you a chance. Jesus gives us a chance, the same way Jonah was sent to give Nineveh a chance. We have an opportunity to be in a relationship with God. There is nothing that we can do on our own, nothing that we can achieve, nothing we can say the right way enough to make that happen. the only reason that we have the opportunity to be in relationship with God at all, to be redeemed and be restored to him in relationship, is because Jesus was sent by him to do this very thing. And so we have to recognize that the chance we have comes from Jesus. And we are so grateful for that, because the Old Testament cities and the people that heard other things from Jesus or from God and from different prophets, they didn't get the signs that we have gotten, the things that we get to look back on and see are true. Jesus continues to talk to the crowd in verse 31, and he says, "The Queen of Sheba will stand up against this generation on Judgment Day and condemn it. For she came from a distant land to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Now someone greater than Solomon is here, but you refuse to listen. The people of Nineveh will also stand up against this generation on Judgment Day and condemn it. For they repented of their sins at the preaching of Jonah. Now someone greater than Jonah is here, but you refuse to repent." So Queen of Sheba, Old Testament, Solomon, she comes from hundreds and hundreds of miles away to talk to Solomon, to ask questions. She's like, "I have questions about your God. I want to know." And he, wisest man in the world, gives her all the answers, tells her everything she needs to know. And she's like, "Cool, I'm on board. I'm with God now." Same way Jonah went to Nineveh, and they were like, "We get it. We hear what you're saying. We're on board." And so Jesus is saying, these people who had Solomon and had Jonah, they believed. That was enough for them. And you're looking me face to face, and you're still saying it's not enough. And there's a disconnect there. It's a misunderstanding of actually who's right in front of you. But what I love about Jesus is that he doesn't force himself on us, that he's not forcing the people in the crowd to be in a relationship with him, that Jesus gives us a choice. He's like, I'm gonna leave this on the table. That's the chance. And you can decide whether to pick it up or not. And that's the choice, where he says, I am never gonna force you to be with me, but I do want you to be with me. I've heard this a bunch of times recently on YouTube videos and in reading and different things that I've watched, debates and things, where people will say, well, I just don't like that if I don't follow Jesus, I don't get to be with him in heaven. Like, I don't get to do that just because I didn't believe in him. And the response is always, hey, listen, if you never ever want to be around someone for like 40 years, and then for the rest of time, they're like, we're going to be together forever, whether you like it or not. Like, that's not who Jesus is. He's not going to force us into his presence for eternity when we have not wanted to be in his presence at all for this life. And so Jesus is like, I am actually not going to require this of you, but I am going to offer this to you. And you get to decide whether you want to be with Jesus or not be with Jesus. But that choice determines our entire future. And so it's important that we make that choice knowing what is on either side of the sacrifice, knowing whether walking with Jesus or walking without Jesus is really the path we want to take. Because we do get to decide who we want to be, how we want to live, who we want Jesus to be in our lives. And our choices, it's not just like choosing right or wrong. It's little choices every day that could be right or could be wrong, but also they just end up defining our lives and who we are and how we experience day-to-day life. So I, in my first ministry job, was at a really large church in Virginia, outside DC. And I was over the preschool large group, which is basically like church for preschoolers. And it was called the Tree House. We have a picture of it. It was like live action Blue's Clues almost. There's like a mailbox that brings letters from Treehouse friends, and there was puppets and sound effects and voiceovers. It was very fun. And I got to write scripts, and I got to direct this, and sometimes I was Cowgirl Kelly. Like, I was just different things all the time. And I had 30 volunteers, and it was just really a fun, creative job. And I really did enjoy it until about a year into my job, and I decided that I was above this job now. It had gotten too easy. I had made friends with people in other areas of ministry, like small groups and college-age ministry and like all these other things that I thought were like more fun or cooler or whatever. And I had to work on Saturdays, and my friends did not have to work on Saturdays, so I was like ready to be done. And instead of just having that conversation or like talking to someone about it, I just started to be terrible at I was just awful. My attitude was bad, and I did the bare minimum of work, which was still fine for what needed to happen, but it wasn't excellent. You could tell by my affect and the way I talked to my team that I didn't really want to be there. And I got away with that for about 2 months, which I'm shocked by. But my boss, Kristen, who's an incredible woman, took me out to lunch. She was like, let's go to lunch today. And I was like, oh gosh, it's happening. I'm getting in trouble. It's caught up to me. And I was right. I did get in trouble. So we went to lunch, and she was really kind about it, but she was like, hey, I don't know what to do about this, but you're not doing this well at all. And in a pretty instantaneous moment, I was like, she is so right, and I am so ashamed of who I've been. What I've chosen to believe about myself and about this role and about our ministry and what it looks like for me to be a part of it. I was so ashamed of myself because my pride had won the day. I had decided that I was better than this. And she was like, listen, you can choose to not have this job, or you can choose to make it good, but this is not working, what's happening right now. And she was absolutely right. So I decided that I was going to choose to love my job, which was hard when I didn't feel like I loved my job. But I said, okay, Lord, I would like a different job for whatever reason still. But if you're not going to give me a new job, I need you to make me actually love this job. And so I started to act like I loved the job. I was like, I'm going to come to work every day with a smile on my face. I'm going to have a good time writing scripts. I'm going to be in good relationship with my volunteers. I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to engage. I'm going to do all these things. And within 2 months or so, I fell in love with my job. Like, I'm obsessed with it. To the point where 2 years later, when the Lord asked me to move here to Illinois to work at the well, I was devastated, heartbroken to leave that role. I had fallen in love with the treehouse and with the preschoolers and with my team. It was one of the greatest gifts of my life so far, and I was devastated to say goodbye to it, to the point where when I got here, I cried a lot the first little while I was at the well. And I just said it was like my whole life is gone. Like everything that I loved is gone. And Pastor Jerry, to his incredible credit, just said, you do have to grieve things. It's okay to grieve, to move on from it. You don't just have to be okay. You don't have to be okay. You can grieve it. And I was grateful that I had loved my job so much in the end that I had to grieve it. But I had made a choice to love it. And then the feeling of love came after. We say, it's one of our core values, that love is a behavior we choose to walk in. We choose to live in a life of love, whether we feel like it or not. And we can choose every day to decide who we are and how we want to be seen and known, and how we want people to think about us and what we want to believe about Jesus. When I first came to the well, I ended up leading high school girls for a while. And they're all old now, having babies and getting married and stuff, which is insane. But when they were in 9th grade and 10th grade, we're sitting in my house and around my family room, and I asked them, what do you want to be defined by? What's the one thing you want people to know about you? When you die someday, what do you hope people are going to say? And one of them said, I hope people know how hard I worked, that I made sure to get everything done, and I did everything I could do, and I was really busy, but I did everything well, and I was a hard worker. That's what I hope people believe. And I said, cool. And one girl said, I hope people know how smart I was, that I worked really hard in school, that I got good grades, that I really wanted to be excellent in academics and get degrees and all these things. And I was like, cool, that's great too. And one said, I really hope people know I'm a good friend, that I was there for people, that I lived a life that meant that people knew I was there for them, that I could be a good friend for a long time. And I said, that's great. And as they all turn to me and go, well, what's your answer? Because you can't ask kids questions and not have an answer for yourself. And so I said, guys, I'm going to be really honest. I hope people know that I love Jesus. That's really the only thing I care about. All the other things about me are fine, and they're good, hopefully, and people like them or don't like them or whatever. But they don't matter to me at all when it comes to my faith. So I hope people believe and say out loud and recognize that I loved Jesus, that my life would be marked by an adoration of my Lord and Savior. And I want to choose every day to live a life that is informed by that desire, to choose to live a life of faith. And that's what we can do. We can choose to live a life of faith. And I understand that faith doesn't come easy for everyone, that it's hard to know things for sure that you can't see or touch or hear. But there is something wonderful about living out a faith life, just trusting that it will manifest in something beautiful. There's a phrase that doesn't fit perfectly, but it does work a little. They say, fake it till you make it. And I'm not saying you should fake your faith life or pretend to be something that you're not. But if you know and understand what a faith life is good for in your own experiences, choosing to live out a life of faith, even when you don't feel it fully or you're not fully confident in it, can only bring beautiful and wonderful things to your life. Every person I know that has chosen to step into a life of faith in prayer and in reading and in community and in church and all the things that you can do as a Christian to do faith well, all those things are only beneficial to us. And every person I know that's given it a try has fallen deeply in love with Jesus, the same way that I gave my job a try and fell deeply in love with my job at McLean. And so I want to invite you to live out a life of visible and loud faith, whether or not it's exactly how you feel, that you can choose to live a life of faith. Later on in Luke, in verse 33, Jesus kind of talks about what the benefit of a visible faith is. He says, "No one lights a lamp and then hides it or puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where its light can be seen by all who enter the house. Your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when it's unhealthy, your body is filled with darkness. Make sure that the light you think you have is not actually darkness. If you are filled with light, with no dark corners, then your whole life will be radiant, as though a floodlight were filling you with light." So if you do have faith, or you choose to have faith, and you hide it, or you're not sure, so you don't want people to see it, you don't want to talk about it, it's not like something that's kind of forefront in your life, it's not useful to you or anyone around you. A lamp is only useful if it's used to light things up. If I light a lamp and put it in my closet, it's a waste of a light bulb and electricity, and I shouldn't be doing that. And so I want us to see that living a life of faith opens us up to a life of radiance, of being fully reflective of God in our lives. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Those who look to the Lord are radiant, and their faces don't ever need to be ashamed." And so I want to look at the Lord constantly so I can always radiate his love and light to people around me. And if you're living a faith life and you're living it boldly and bravely and proudly and loudly, don't ever let anything smother it. If darkness starts to creep in, make sure you're equipped to fight against that darkness, or have people around you that can help you. If you're nervous about living out your faith in public places like your school or your work or with your family or whoever, just know that the faith that you have is stronger than those things. And I want to encourage you not to be scared or nervous or concerned with what the world thinks of your faith, because they can't understand it. So I want us to step out in faith and live life in faith. In Hebrews 11:6, it says, "And it is impossible to please God without faith. For anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him." When we seek God sincerely with our whole heart, with our true desire to know him, he will reward us and he will be found. In this chapter of Hebrews, there's a list of some of the great heroes of faith, all the things that they were able to accomplish or experience because of their faith. It says, in faith, Noah built the ark. In faith, Sarah had a baby in her old age. In faith, all of the people of Israel walked through a parted Red Sea to the promised land. And it goes on to name 15 other people. And then it says in verse 32, "How much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms. They ruled with justice and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the flames of fire and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. And women received their loved ones back again from death." Like, that should jazz you up. Like, that's an incredible testimony of what faith can do. In the chapter, it also talks about all the hard things people went through in their faith, the struggles that they were willing to walk through because their faith was so strong. They believed in God so much. They were like, I will go through these hard things. And so we know that life is not guaranteed to be perfect because of our faith, that there will be hard things that we have to navigate, but faith makes them easier and worthwhile. I can't imagine walking through this world, through this life, without the hope of Christ, because it's too hard to go at it without faith. It ends in verse 39 and 40 by saying, "All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God had something better in mind for us, so that they would not reach perfection without us." That Jesus was still coming. All those people that it accounts for in that chapter had not known Jesus yet, but we do. We get to know him, and we get to know what it is to walk with him, what it is to preach his name to people, what it means to live a life of faith. And so I want to ask us, does our faith make us visible? Is the church benefiting from our faith lives? Because it is the chosen vehicle that God has created in order to build the kingdom, to bring the lost back to be found. The church is what God has chosen and equipped to spread the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. And I don't know if we always do it as well as we can with all of the incredible information and evidence that we have, all the signs and wonders that Jesus gave us, knowing historically that he died and rose from the dead. N.T. Wright says it like this: "The light of Christ has been in the world for 2,000 years. Are we any better at embracing it for ourselves than Jesus' contemporaries were? For that matter, are we shining this light to the world so that they can see the one who's greater than Solomon, greater than Jonah?" There are people in the Bible who are willing to die for their faith, that would give everything just to bring one more person to know Jesus, to save one more lost soul. And I want our faith to be really active. And so I'm going to ask us this morning, the band's going to come and lead us into a time of reflective worship where we get to respond to what God's doing and saying. And I want us to really think about today, is our faith active? Are we living a life of faith in Jesus Christ? If we are, does it look the way it should? If we think we are, how do we know for sure? And if we're not, what would it look like to start that this morning? Is my life informed by my faith, marked by God's love, everything that God wants it to be? We have some touch points for you throughout the service, throughout the auditorium, where you can kind of lean in as you hear and respond to God in this next worship song. We have our prayer stations throughout the room where there is communion. If you'd like to partake, you can light a candle as a symbol of a burning and yearning to see what God is doing and to see it come to fruition. And there are places to leave prayer requests at the cross. We always have prayer partners up at the front and in the back of the auditorium who would love to partner with you in prayer for whatever's on your heart this morning. Please don't leave today without engaging with someone if you know there's something that you need prayer for. But however you choose to respond, just always remember that God is so near and so delighted to hear your voice and engage with you, that he wants to be in relationship with you and he wants this time with you. But your faith is the most important thing about you. It will determine all the most important parts of your life moving forward. And so this morning, really take the time to be with the Lord and say, is my life what you want it to be? Would you pray with me? Father, we bless your name. We thank you for how good you are. We thank you that you gave us a chance and gave us the choice. And I pray, God, that this morning we would respond with open hearts and open ears and open eyes to everything you have for us, God. That you would be the author and perfecter of our faith and help us to live that out in whatever your will has for us, God. We love you. We bless you in Jesus' name.